Three, two, one. Alan Owen, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you very much. Been a busy week here at Willowbrook Hospice, but then it's a busy week for most people at the moment, I think.
Yeah. So I thought we'd do a podcast today because I saw what had happened on the news, your report on Northwest Tonight. So I thought if I get you on and maybe you can talk about a bit more detail about what the situation is like at Willowbrook, how it's come here, and just maybe just talk, like I say, in a bit more detail about what the situation is. So we can start by just give yourself an intro, talk about your role at the hospice as well as just general hospice information.
Okay, certainly, yes. So I started at Willowbrook Hospice in May 2019 after 25 years in education, but also around 16, 17 years working for a national charity as a volunteer and ultimately ended up as chairman. So quite a mixed bag of experience. I had previously been a volunteer at Willowbrook, so I knew a little bit about it. So obviously when the role for corporate director came up, I was very keen to apply and luckily got the job. So over the last year, things were going pretty well for Willowbrook. As for probably a lot of hospices in the area, people were very generous with their time and with their money. And then, of course, come March, terrible things happen. We had to close down all our shops. We had to cancel the fundraising activities that we were running. And obviously our income just plummeted overnight. So for most hospices around the country, Hospice UK were campaigning with the government to raise some funds, and luckily we received some money in April and May. Our third payment in June was much reduced because obviously everything was being done so quickly during this pandemic that we were getting money, and then obviously we needed to justify whether that was putting us ahead of the game, whether it was helping us keep pace with what was required. And ultimately the money was reduced in June. The July payment is just to come through in September, but that will be the end of the government funding. Yeah. So the reason we managed to get a slot on Northwest Tonight is one of our patrons is Roger Johnson, obviously a presenter on that programme, and he very kindly pushed forward our tale to Northwest Tonight. And the reason they did that was because, quite rightly, they felt it was a national story. So this isn't all about Willowbrook and how, woe is us, how terrible things are for us. They are difficult, but actually it's going to impact on hospices across the country, as we can see over the next few months.
Yeah, I mean, before lockdown, there was plans in place, wasn't there, for a new sort of head of fundraising role, and there must have been plans in place before that. Moving forward, must have had a vision. So what was that vision?
The vision was, sorry Mark, the vision was very much to look at tapping into areas of income generation that we hadn't exploited particularly well up to that point. And so we really wanted to look at focusing on businesses. Businesses have got a lot to give in terms of time, their expertise. But we were hoping that we could encourage companies to not only do that, but give us the money as well.
Yeah.
Go on.
No, go on. Sorry, no, go on.
So I was just going to say, so the role was tweaked a little bit, and we were looking at somebody with a real keen focus on linking with businesses and trying to get them to do a lot of the work for us. Fundraising, as you know, you've done it for a long time, is changing, and maybe a lot of the things that people have done in the past, they're still popular, people like to do them, but we can't guarantee they'll generate a lot of money. So you need to look at new opportunities to raise funds these days.
So what would be your vision now moving forward?
Well, it's very different now, because I think for most charities that did a lot of group events, such as whether it's a walk, a run, or any kind of gathering, those days are done and dusted. I mean, we can't even really run like a nice afternoon tea or a coffee morning or anything, because we don't have the capacity in the rooms anymore for safety to allow them to happen. So what it seems to be is that, forget those ideas, now everybody who's doing fundraising has really got to be switched on to how you engage with businesses and engage with the community differently. So there's one thing I was aware of months ago, I think it was. The London Marathon in April was postponed to October, and I think even now it's going to be a virtual event. So some charities are tapping into if you were going to run the marathon for us and raise money, How about you doing 26.2 miles in a different way, in your back garden, in your front room, over a week, however you want to do it, upside down, and raise money for us? And that seems to me an indicator of how things are going. We can't get groups together, but we can get individuals to do the same thing, but individually. And if we can get those people to attract the sponsorship that they used to get from friends and family for doing a group event, then that's how it's going to be. But it means that instead of running real things, we're doing virtual. So we need people to have the social media skills, the internet skills, website development skills, all that kind of stuff. So it's a really different job for people that are used to traditional fundraising activities.
Yeah, I think that the larger charities, like the British Art Foundation, they were already on this sort of thing.
Right.
They had the marathon, and they were already miles ahead. So, same with like Macmillan and that. So I think for maybe a smaller charity or a local charity, that them skill sets aren't necessarily there. So there's a lot of reskilling and upskilling, isn't there?
That's right, and I suppose something like you mentioned, the British Heart Foundation, well, compared to most local hospices, the resources they have access to in terms of people and money is just huge. So they can run a complete retraining program. They've already got, a humongous number of volunteers, and amongst that, people will be the ones that can help. So I think another change for us is really refocusing on volunteers and utilising the widest range of volunteer skill sets possible. We're aware we've got some excellent volunteers, but we don't really utilise the widest skills they may have had when they were working, before they started volunteering, or in other capacities. So we need to upskill volunteers, but we also need to say, we need this to happen. Have you got the skills to do it? So we're using a new volunteer software package that will improve our communication and improve the way we capture information about each volunteer, so that actually we're getting a much better picture of the skills our volunteers have.
Yeah. So if we go back a bit to actually during lockdown,
yeah,
this was very much still open, wasn't it? You had patients in, you had all services still running to some degree. So what was that period like? Still having patients in, still having families visit, albeit on maybe a reduced scale. What was that like for?
Well, we had patients in, correct. We didn't have visits for a long time, and then ultimately we were able to open up to window visits. Now we've got visits in place, but it's under very restricted circumstances to just protect the inpatient unit from COVID. All the staff that were not furloughed were working from the hospice, utilising clinics, rooms that were no longer being used by doctors because we couldn't let the outpatients in. So it became this very kind of hunkered down attitude. And it was good because we were all working very closely together, but very much reduced. But what we looked at then was to try and find ways that people could still donate money to us, and our initial appeal in April was very, very successful, but naturally these things come to an end, so that rate at which people are able to donate to us has slowed right down. And I think now we're entering a period where people are very nervous about the future, so perhaps they're going to hang on to money like we all do, to see what's going to go on there. But the hospice has changed now. We've opened up a bit more. As I say, we've got some visits coming in. I'm still not going on the wards because we're keeping that a very safe area. So it's only those key staff that need to be there that are there. We've reopened our office building and we're starting to conduct business from there. We've opened the cafe and we've opened some of our shops. So we feel as though there's things starting again, but it's very slow, it's very controlled, and it's certainly nowhere near what it was or indeed where we need things to be. And that'll be the same for every hospice across the country, I think.
What is your plan, do you think, moving forward? So now we're here. I know you touched on the fundraising. Is it trying to get back to full working order, just getting back to normal, I suppose, is what I'm getting at?
Well, yeah, and I think with fundraising, what the work needs to be now, interestingly, we just had a fundraising discussion this morning, it's about identifying all the different ways, the routes money come into the hospice, and looking at is there something we can do to influence those? Can we get more money, for example, when people give us in memoria payments? Can we increase that by percentage? Legacies, it may not make a difference now, but if we do some work now, in 3, 4, 5 years' time, we may see that we get some additional money through legacies. In terms of, okay, we may have raised £2,000 doing such and such a car boot sale, for example, last year. Well, we can't do the car boot sale in the same way this year, so is there something we can do instead that will raise that £2,000 we're losing, or maybe increase it to 3,000? So it's looking at replacing events. It's also looking at adding in events where we've got gaps, just to see. So looking at every way money comes to the hospice and identifying ways that we can add to that so we get as much money as we can. With retail, because I know that's combined with fundraising in some hospices, with the retail, it's about being as efficient as possible, and that's where clearly we've got some redundancy conversations to be had. Very difficult, very sad, but we need to hang on to every penny that we get. So if we can be as efficient as possible, then that will help Willowbrook to return to full glory, if you like, but a challenge.
What do you think the long-term impact could be on the hospice?
We are in a dire situation. I mean, anyone that saw the piece on Northwest tonight a couple of weeks ago will realise that, the hospice is in a dire situation because most of our money comes through fundraising and through income generation through the shops. So we've lost almost 75% of our income. So it's going to grow slowly, but we're working on a 2-year recovery plan. So we hope that within 2 years, we should be back in the position where we are able to operate as normally as possible with the right amount of money, the right staffing levels, and hopefully able to access all the patients that need our help. So we have to do everything we can to make that happen. So the efficiencies now, the looking at where we can add money and add value to our income streams, that's what's key. So it's guesswork. We haven't done this before, have we? So but a large part of it is common sense as well. If we're spending X amount of money on something, we need to reduce the amount of money we spend and hang on to more of the money that comes in. So it's a challenge all around, but we're having a crack at it.
Yeah. And that's one of the questions I was going to ask, just going back to lockdown. So you were operational throughout, you obviously had patients. So money was going out all the time, wasn't it? It wasn't like the hospice was shut down. There was no expenditure. You was always running. So you was always having the expenses going out, and that wasn't being subsidised at all from, like you say, income. So you was always making losses during that time.
Well, yes and no. I mean, we were able to reduce our outgoings by furloughing staff. We didn't know at the time how the money would come back to us, but ultimately the government introduced the plan of how to claim back wages. So some of it came back, but not all, because obviously they didn't pay 100% of people's wages. So we were able to reduce the outgoings there. We've kept the staff running the actual clinical part of the hospice on full time because we are offering support to the NHS in case they're overrun with people that need treatment. And we're also looking after the people that would normally come and stay in the hospice for a period of time. So we were able to reduce our outgoings. We got payment holidays and indeed some free rent periods on some of the premises that we operate for shops. We were able to take a payment holiday on national insurance and tax payments for staff. However, all those things have come to an end now. So not only are we having to pay them again, but we're also having to start repaying on the holidays. What we tried to do was just improve our cash flow. So the first actions were to really manage our money and safeguard the hospice's finances. We'd done that part as best we can. So now we're just eking things out as we go. It's a discovery, really, because we don't know what's around the corner, any of us, so we're just trying to do the best we can.
Yeah, I mean, I talked to a fundraiser on another podcast, October time, for charities, etc., those who are still furloughed, those who haven't. I said that I think October could be you might see more redundancies in general because the furlough are ending.
That's right, the furlough scheme comes to an end. I mean, there's a contribution, I think it's almost 30% contribution in October, but, we can help staff by either keeping them on furlough if we can't afford to bring them back, but secondly, by letting the furlough scheme run to its conclusion, that would extend any period of time that somebody's employment lasts, and then if they have to be made redundant, at least you've done the best you can. It's not a good situation, but we need to really be pushing on saving money, maximising our use of volunteers, and just trying to create additional funds coming in where we can. We don't have the magic answer. There's no magic wand to any of this. It's just trying things and just seeing what difference it makes. But I think Willowbrook, generally, we've got a good management team. We have an excellent board of trustees who will help support us in the way that we need. And the latest information we've looked at looks as though Willowbrook will still be here for a while yet. So we'll just keep working our way to make sure that happens.
Yeah. Have you been in contact with any of the hospices? Just general chat with them, see how they're getting on, or is it to see if there's a similar situation elsewhere? Because I'm sure there will be, but have you spoken to any of the hospices?
Yeah, I have. I've spoken to a few hospices around the Northwest. Obviously, there's a Hospice UK Northwest group, but informally had conversation with people doing similar jobs or chief execs in different places. And we are all in a similar situation. The difference is some hospices have more robust money in the bank, if you like, in terms of reserves through whatever, it's not necessarily good judgment. Sometimes it's just very large legacies that haven't been needed. So some are in a different position, but essentially we're all seeing the same thing. Money coming in has dropped. Money going out needs to be stemmed. So we're all having to make the same decisions regardless of whether we've got a savings plan going on in the bank. So it's not a happy time, but I think with the massive support from the local community, individuals and organisations, the press, etc., we will hopefully, with hospices, get the message out there, let people know that actually this service that everybody values is under threat, and that will hopefully start to turn things around as well so that we can be here. We've supported, I believe, in the lifetime of Willowbrook Hospice, over 15,000 patients have stayed here, been treated by us, and that's a huge number of people. It's 10% of the population of St Helens, so it has a big impact on the local community. We want to be doing that for another 23 years as well.
Lastly, do you want to do a shout out where people can donate if they're listening to this, how they can help?
Yeah, certainly. If people wish to donate to Willowbrook, the best way to do it is to jump on our Willowbrook Hospice website, which is www.willowbrook.org.uk. And you can make a donation to that. Equally, pop in, give us cash. But actually what we really need is volunteers at the moment. We need people to volunteer their time to help run our shops. They're not open to full capacity yet because we need volunteers. So volunteering is a way forward for us as well. That will help us in our cafes, in our shops, in actually on reception desk, and just generally helping out in running events for us. And anybody out there that sees themselves as a community fundraiser, if they want help to organise an event to raise funds for us or any other local hospice, we'd be happy to give you advice. So yeah, lots of different ways you can help, and it doesn't just involve giving us money.
Brilliant. Well, Alan, thank you so much for your time today.
Good talking to you, and appreciate your interest in Willowbrook as well.
You're welcome. Well, thank you again, Alan. I'll speak to you soon.
And speak to you soon.